Wow, I love this topic. Exactly what we've been waiting for is let's talk about the severity color scale that is introduced in NFPA 70B, as well as meeting the NETA standards when it comes to understanding thermal temperatures and how they're used in electrical thermography. Maybe you're new to it. Well, sit back. We're going to get into that today here on this episode of Master the NEC. We're going to learn a little bit more about what the severity scale means and how it should be applied.
Welcome to the Master the NEC podcast, the ultimate destination for anyone passionate about the electrical trade. Whether you're a seasoned electrician, an eager apprentice, or just someone who wants to dive deep into the world of electrical work, you've come to the right place. Join your host, Paul Abernathy, a true authority in the industry with over 38 years of trade experience, as he electrifies your mind with in-depth discussions, expert tips, and valuable insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Each episode, Paul will illuminate the complexities of the trade, decode the National Electrical Code, and share the latest industry trends, all while empowering you to take your electrical career to the next level. So, gear up, plug in, and get ready to supercharge your knowledge, because with the Master the NEC podcast, the power is in your hands. Now get ready. Here is your host, Paul Abernathy.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Master the NEC, the podcast where I, Paul Abernathy, talk about anything electrical related, and of course, anything to do with the electrical industry we'll talk about on this show, whether it's business, whether it's marketing, whether it's HR, promotion, advancement, whether you're thinking of starting an electrical contracting business, maybe you have electrical code questions. Look, we're fair game for any of that, so feel free to reach out to us. You can always send something in for us to be able to answer on this episode. Just all you got to do is go to our website, fasttracksystem.com. You'll see a Let's Ask Paul, and you can obviously submit it through Let's Ask Paul. Send your question. Either I'll answer in an email or it may be selected for an upcoming podcast. So it's all you got to do is go to the website at fasttracksystem.com, and you will see the Let's Ask Paul feature. And you can ask me anything you want. And if I like it and think it can broadly be used for a lot of people, I'll put it on the podcast. That way we help a lot of people out. So this episode, I want to talk a little bit. It's a topic that I love because I've been working on this for many, many years in the field. And I had it back when the thermal imaging cameras were pretty expensive. And we would rent it when we needed it. Now you can own them, and I own many, all different levels for different uses, and they have their different uses that I use them for. But again, we recently partnered with Milesy, so we have upgraded a lot of our cameras to the Milesy, and I am extremely impressed with their technology. Not to mention, Milesy is known in their golf optics for the rangefinders. They're known for measurement devices, hunting devices, that thermal imaging, night vision type. I mean, they're known for so many things. I mean, they have literally hundreds of patents. And so it's exciting to partner with a company like that. In fact, I'm going to be hooking up with them in Florida later on the month of January at the PGA show. So I'll be in Florida. And we'll be talking. I'll be meeting their CEO. And so anyway, it's exciting times to be involved. But one of the big things, I guess, is it was a couple years ago now, and it's kind of slowly sinking in to a lot of maintenance programs, preventative maintenance. A lot of inspection companies are now requiring this as part of an annual or biannual or even a monthly inspection. And they're starting to incorporate these things in there. So, you could be an electrician that just, maybe you just do residential and you really aren't even aware of what NFPA 70B is. But I'm telling you that understanding the concepts of being able to use thermal imaging to find problems that are not going to rear their head until something gets to this volatile level that things start to break down, and then it starts cascading into a bigger problem. And again, if you're an electrician, there is a way for you to introduce thermal imaging into every aspect of your business, whether it's adding an additional service as a residential electrician, whether you're doing a final inspection on all terminations and motors in an industrial facility, data centers. There is an opportunity to incorporate preventative maintenance using a thermal imaging camera. In fact, so important that NFPA 70B now makes it mandatory to have a thermal imaging program because these devices work. And I think the biggest thing is people don't understand how to use them. That's the biggest problem that we run into. And so my goal is to educate more people on understanding thermal imaging beyond the basics. And, thermal imaging is typically broken into, you have a level 1, level 2, level 3 thermography, and the scale changes depending on what aspect of work you're looking to do. We only focus on electrical. So our program is equal to or greater than the level 1 thermography because that's really we only capture the aspect of electrical. That is it. And then what we do is we deep dive on it. Whereas others will give, some examples, we deep dive on it because we don't care about the building envelope. I don't care about the water leakage. I don't care. That's for somebody else. Now, if you want to add that into your portfolio, then go get our basic thermography course over on our website. It's not but like $69. Get that, and you can learn all those. I mean, there's a ton of information there. But that's not our goal when it comes to the Certified Thermal Electrician program. We're taking electricians that are already licensed, criteria very high, and they've met that threshold. And now we're trying to introduce them into how to understanding thermography properly. Okay. So I'm excited what our program can bring. Now, today's episode, we really want to focus on the severity scale. And this scale is something that harmonizes with NFPA 70B, as well as harmonizing with NETA, and making sure that it meets all that criteria in order to keep you compliant as a thermal electrician. Okay. As an electrician, you have to understand PPE. You have to understand your boundaries that you're working in. You have to understand the level of PPE that you have to have. You also understand there's certain things that can reduce the level of PPE based on whether you have sight windows or the equipment is geared with it, or you're making a recommendation. If they're early in the process and they're doing switch gear, you might be that guy or gal that says, look, get the gear with the thermal imaging windows or the ability to check it without removing the cover. It really reduces your exposure and drops the PPE down. So that in itself might save the company tons of money over paying for this extra feature versus what's going to take to do a thermal preventative maintenance routine that requires either a shutdown, a lockout tagout, or gearing up, the cost of gear. When you do a cost analysis on it, it's probably cheaper to be in the forefront and be that person that recommends to a project, look, make sure your equipment comes with sight windows, or make sure your equipment comes with the ability to have a trough with an openable port that allows for thermal imaging, that it's designed into the equipment. And many of the manufacturers make this, and it's available right now because they know that NFPA 70B is a mandatory requirement now. It's not optional. It's mandatory. So they're accommodating that. And it's something that you want to be on the forefront of that and make those types of recommendations. But it's important that you understand this severity scale, especially if you're doing reports, because you want to be able to convey the message properly. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Now, why does the severity scale matter? So NFPA 70B doesn't just want you to take a bunch of pictures, whether they're visual pictures in the normal visual spectrum or the thermography pictures in the thermal IR spectrum. They don't want you just to take pictures. Pictures are great, but they don't understand. All we see is a bunch of colors depending on what palette you're using. You need to understand when one palette may be better over the other, whether rainbow may be better than iron. Okay? So you need to understand whether it's blue heat, green heat, red hot, whether or not whether it's white hot or black hot, you need to understand which may be the best one for your situation. And the only way you know this is to get very familiar with your thermal camera. And there's many, many, many manufacturers out there. And so again, it really takes you to practice. And you don't have to find abnormal conditions to practice. Trust me. You can use the regular heat. The heat's going to be there. It's going to be there. So there are many ways that you can practice and get familiar with it, whether you're using a normal electrical panel, a 12240 or a 277-480 or whatever. Again, just practice safe practices and understand PPE where necessary. Know your boundaries. You'll be okay. But you got to practice. You have to understand it. Okay. All right. So many people say, okay, well, NFPA 70B or the principles behind that, which by the way, you might say, well, I'm a thermographer, I'm doing residential, whatnot. And you miss something and somebody comes in and determines in a fire that you recently had an inspection or you had something. And as more and more people introduce thermography into the program, or they learn that the electrician there had thermography training or whatnot, it can raise your liability if you don't do your due diligence. Okay. So it doesn't, if you don't have it in your program, then you can't use it. So therefore you're not expected to. But in many residential, light commercial programs, and whether you're in industrial motors, whether you will have some type of preventive maintenance, or you're offering as an ancillary service to evaluate their equipment. You're the expert. You're the trained professional. NFPA 70B's guidelines really talk about the ability to not just take a picture. You have to be able to interpret what you see. You need to then transfer that into a classification. And we break that down in our thermal imaging program so that it's not just numbers. It's a color scale of action. That's important. We try to keep it simple, stupid, and break it down into a really actionable color scheme. And it's based on temperature variations that are compliant with NFPA 70B and any NETA standard. Okay. Now, you have to interpret that image. You have to classify that image, and then you have to give some type of corrective action based on what you see. Otherwise, any old Joe Schmo can snap a picture and look at colors and go, "Ooh, that's pretty." Right? What does that mean? In other words, you don't just say, "Man, that looks hot." Okay? You would say, "This is how abnormal it is," or "This is how urgent it is," or "This is what we should do next." Those type of solutions to a problem, okay? And that is so important today. I can tell you, I get sent images all the time, and I look at them and I go, you know what? The first question is that there's a preventative maintenance program in there, and they inevitably always say no. And then I go, well, this could have been detected by the level of damage that I'm looking at in the progression of heat here. This could have been picked up if it was on a monitored scale. And look, it's cheaper to monitor it than it is to have to repair it once it breaks down. You got the downtime, you have the equipment time, you have the potential hazards that it raises, potential fire. This is why NFPA 70B is no longer voluntary. It's a mandatory standard. This is why it changed, okay? This is why insurance companies want thermography done. This is why a lot of business owners who have a lot of money invested in their infrastructure, like data centers and industrial facilities, they want to establish this for their maintenance team, and they want to know that you're ahead of the curve. If you see something coming and you're tracking it, you're logging it, you're plotting it, we want to know when it's time to be ready than to react. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. That's just the way the world is right now, and it's the way it should be. Now, when you look at the severity scale, we here at the CTE programs, Certified Thermal Electrician Program, have put our program around a framework that complies with NFPA 70B and the NETA standards, okay? And what we've done is we've created a baseline, a color profile, and what it does is it establishes your delta T, or your temperature rise, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. The severity in color structure, what it means by color structure, and then what you should do or what your action should be. Because again, as with anything, you can be part of the problem, but you really should be an integral part of the solution, right? So when you look at a severity scale and you try to create one, and again, they may vary by different company, but again, we base ours based on the the standards to be compliant, because again, we want to protect you at the end of the day. We want to make sure that you're well within the spectrum of liability, that type of thing, or lack thereof of having any liability. So the key measurement here when you're doing this is called the delta T, or the delta symbol. It's a triangle with a T. You'll see that from time to time. You'll see it in our course. You'll see that out in the field. You'll see that if you look at various reports. You'll wonder what the hell does that mean? What is that triangle and a T? What the hell does that mean? Well, basically, it's the difference between what you're measuring and what you're actually referencing. Now, that could be the difference between whether you're taking an ambient temperature and then you're taking that temperature and measuring a lug and seeing the difference in temperature, or you're doing what we call peer-to-peer evaluations, where you're taking the measurement from, say, lugs of, let's say, phase A, B, and a C in a three-phase. You take an A and B, okay, and you're adding them together and averaging it by 2, and then you're comparing it to the C lug, which may be greater or a lot higher. And so you take the two that are closer together and you create that peer-to-peer, and then you evaluate it with whatever the reading is that you're getting off the actual lug that's elevated, and you're going to come up with a value that's the delta T. Okay. So, and again, we get deeper into this in our course, but that's what you're looking for. You're really looking for the measurement of the differences of temperatures. Okay. Whether it's from the ambient to whatever the reference is you're measuring, to the similar component that may be running under the same similar load, but doesn't have the same thermal profile, because you're like, well, why the hell is this one running hotter than this one? It's the same load. Maybe it's a motor. It's supposed to be balanced. You have 3 phases. Why is this leg running so much hotter? Something's going on, because leg A and leg B are fine, and leg C, and it's a 3-phase motor. Understanding the concepts of the motor, you're thinking something's not right. Is a winding going bad? Is there a loose termination? In other words, something ain't right. Okay? So you'll get better at that. We don't expect you to all of a sudden just pick up a thermal imaging camera and understand that concept, although that one's a pretty easy example. Sometimes they can be a little more detailed, because some breakers run hotter than others. So you see a hot breaker, you just don't go crying wolf. You got to understand what's the temperature that breaker is expected to run at, and what is acceptable from the manufacturer's perspective for that breaker to be. Yeah, it may seem hot, but if the manufacturer is okay with it at a certain temperature, what's the point in crying wolf? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's the concept. Now, what we teach in the program, this matches the NFPA-70B and the NETA thermal findings to be evaluated by temperature difference, not just by raw temperature alone. We're looking for these differences. That's your delta T. Now, as I told you, they're broken down into, we break it down into 4 for easy understanding. You have a green, a yellow, an orange, and a red. Okay? So the green. Now, the green is normal. That means if you're doing a delta T and you see a variance between 1 degree up to 10 degrees above the reference, okay, then what happens is that's a normal. This is a normal operating variation. Nothing is wrong, but you document it. You take the pictures, both visual and thermal, okay, and you put it on the normal monitored schedule. It means you're going to be doing this again, whether it's every month, whether it's every 6 months, whether it's every 3 months, whatever the plan is that you've established in your facility, okay? Now, NFPA-70B will consider this an acceptable operating condition from 1 to 10 degrees above the reference. Not a problem, okay? Now, the next one is yellow. Yellow is a possible problem. It's a probable concern. Certainly is something that needs to be monitored. Something's developing here, okay? So we're now outside of that normal realm. Now, this is an emergency, but it's in a developing condition. So in this scenario, NFPA-70B expects this to be documented as such and scheduled for maintenance, because there's some reason it's elevated. Doesn't make it that it's immediate, but you know what? It's developing. It needs to be monitored. And during the next scheduled maintenance, this is when you're going to actually check everything, check terminations, check all those type of things. So it's something to be aware of. It's something to document, but this is where a really, really good maintenance program can prevent really expensive failures by saying this is going on the list, and you have a report, and in the report, you'll have a column where you'll check it, and this says that this is one of the first things that needs to be evaluated on the next thermal imaging session, and you make sure that you record the characteristics, what the ambient temperature is at the time of this test, okay, what the loading is, again, and if you figure this is a good time to understand that you're going to have to use a digital multimeter to take readings. That's why you have to understand your PPE. You have to understand all the parameters, just like you would if you were working on a piece of equipment. Nothing's changed here. You're still working in that environment, okay? So in a lot of the data centers and a lot of the big commercials, they have logging, which will tell you what the loading is. And, just take as much notes as you can for the next thermal session, but definitely want to make sure it's on your normal maintenance schedule, okay? Now, the next one is orange. Now, orange is a probable problem, okay? So if you've got plus 21 to plus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, at this point, the problem is no longer theoretical. It's not a situation where it is a yellow, it's a possible concern. This is a probable problem because it's possibly, remember, we're evaluating these things based on other references, okay? Whether it's peer-to-peer, based on other mutual lugs that are running similar loads that are not overheating versus this one. Also comparing it possibly to an ambient temperature, to what the ambient temperature is and what this is running. So we're taking all those things into consideration, right? Now, the best thing is to be able to compare it to other similar loads, okay? That's the best type of peer-to-peer to do. But the point is here is that we're looking at it as this is a real abnormal heating, and it is a probability of failure is increasing rapidly. Now, here's what's interesting. When you're doing a report, and we explain this in our program, that it's plus 21 to plus 40. If I get readings that are 38 and 39, it's still in the orange, but I'm going to make a note that it is rapidly approaching the red, and then it must be monitored, but it definitely has to be on the repair schedule sooner than later. So that means you would go look at when the next scheduled maintenance is, and it may warrant this piece of equipment being bumped up in the schedule. Because a lot of times there's scheduled maintenance. This may be one that you're like, you know what, we're going to bump this to the next one because it's immediate. But we're definitely going to increase the monitoring. One of the things I usually teach electricians in this scale, when you get an orange, that if you're scheduled, the maintenance or the monitoring is every 30 days or every 3 months or 6 months, this becomes one that you want to look at least on a weekly basis, okay? At least on a weekly basis to start monitoring this. Now, it makes it much easier if you have a site window, things like that. But again, everything's a little different. And again, this is applying across a broad spectrum. So we're not talking about just panels, just buses, just lugs. We're talking about motors and all that kind of stuff, which we do cover extensively in our program, by the way, if you're wondering. I should mention also that anytime you're in our program and you have questions about something, we have what's called Fast Tracks Interact. It's engaged on this product as well, which means that you write in there at the bottom right of your lesson, you'll see this little, looks like a blue cloud. You click on it and you put your question in there, okay? And when your question's in there, that allows our team to be notified, and we will come and try to answer that question for you, okay? It's just a built-in feature for those that are in the program. You can do it in the comments now, but again, we're probably slower to react to the comments because those are comments about the course, not really about in the course. But we'll still answer the questions because, again, at the end of the day, we want you to learn. I mean, that's the whole process here. Now, with the orange level, again, probable problem, repair soon, this is where electricians will earn their money because this is where we're at that threshold of a serious issue developing. And I lose absolutely no sleep. I don't feel like I'd be crying wolf at all when I'm in this zone and it's moving up rapidly in this zone and it's getting close to the red. This is where you earn your money, because this is where, even if they go into and look at it and don't see any problems, you can at least breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, well, the images show differently. And as long as you take pictures, as long as you show them, they can say, well, what'd you do? You cried wolf. Well, no. Look, this is based on the normal standards, NETA standards. I would rather be prepared and be proactive than reactive. Okay? And that's a really good maintenance program that does that. Now, the next one is anything over 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This is no longer maintenance. This is a real risk management call. At this level, NFPA-70B requires that the condition be treated as serious and immediate action is required. There's a fire risk. There's an equipment failure risk. There's an unplanned. There's one thing to have a planned downtime, especially in data centers and commercial buildings or buildings that have a lot of motors, production facilities, big car facilities, manufacturing plants where they assembly line. There's one thing to schedule downtime for maintenance. There's another to have an unplanned downtime and equipment blow up, and then it takes 3 times as long to get it back up. Trust me, they're not going to have a problem with you scheduling something as a preventative maintenance program based on something you find in a orange level of severity versus waiting and saying, don't worry about it, and then all of a sudden it gets into the red and stuff starts breaking down. Trust me. This is where you stop watching and you start fixing the problems. Okay. Now, how all this meets NFPA-70B? Well, NFPA-70B requires that every thermal finding include some key information. So if you're in a company and they want to reduce their liability, it doesn't matter, to be honest with you, whether or not they're doing something that NFPA-70B kicks in or not. If you're a company and you're going to be thermal imaging, you want to make sure that you follow across the board the standard practices, whether or not you're working in something that's a Tesla facility or you're working in somebody's house. You want to make sure you keep it simple, stupid. You have a plan you follow regardless. And if you're going to do thermography, you want to make sure that you still comply with NFPA-70B, because I can promise you, if something happens, you need to hang your hat on something. And you're going to say, look, I follow the practical protocol of 70B. And, I can't foresee stuff. I did my best to make a recommendation, a classification based on NFPA-70B. That's it. And it gives you something to hang your hat on. Just like I say about the National Electrical Code. If you do it in compliance with the minimum safety standard, you don't go below that standard just because somebody says it's okay or somebody says that my jurisdiction doesn't enforce it. If you follow the minimum safety standards, then you have something to hang your hat on, provided you installed it correctly. A great example is Texas. You have a jurisdiction, they say down in Houston, they don't require certain things, right? Well, the state of Texas requires you to be on the 2023 National Electrical Code. Well, in other areas of Texas, they may be on the 2020. Well, that's fine for local inspections and passing it, but let's assume something happens. Now it's going to go to TDLR, Department of Labor and Regulation. What's going to happen now is they're going to do an investigation. This has happened already down in Austin, okay? What they're going to do is they're going to say, I don't care what your locality said. The state is what issues your license, and the state is under the 2023. So you're going to follow the state. Now, you might appease the locality, but you're going to follow the state. You've heard me talk about this kind of stuff all the time. Do not think that you are never liable for anything just because you follow somebody says it's okay or an inspector says, yeah, I'll let you do that. If it's not complying with the minimum safety standard, you're hanging your butt out there. This goes the same way if you're going to do thermal imaging. You make sure that across the board, you follow the same procedures. And that's what we talk about in our program. We want to keep you doing great thermal. We want to help you find issues at great value to your customers. But you got to follow the protocols. So what does NFPA-70B require that you do in your findings? Well, you need to do measured temperature. You need to show the reference comparisons. Again, that's your delta T, what you're referencing things to. You need to make sure you add a severity classification, and you need to give corrective action recommendation. Now, this severity scale provides all 4 of those in a way that is consistent, defensible, easy to understand, and repeatable, folks, across all electricians in your company and the facility. This is what makes it compliant. There's no deviation. You can't have anybody like me gets up in a court as an expert witness and say, well, why did you deviate from the company policy, or why did you go rogue when these are standard protocols? You say, I followed the NFPA 70B, I followed these parameters, and this is what our company as a whole. Trust me, it's about protecting you. So a simple analogy that I can give folks is kind of like you're in a vehicle and you're driving down the road. Green means go. Yellow means proceed with caution. Orange would mean warning, warning. And of course, we don't have that on our street lights, but maybe we should. Maybe we should have a green, yellow, then it turns orange to say, hey, bro, the light's getting ready to change in like a second. You can't make it. And then, of course, you got red, stop immediately. So your thermal camera basically shows the speed. The severity scale tells you whether to drive safe or you're about to crash. So anyway, thermal imaging doesn't just find heat, folks. It tells a story. And as a certified thermal electrician, you're translating that heat, that image, that palette that's available in your thermal imaging cameras that have come down in affordability. I'm telling you right now, the one that we recommend for your day in and day out, your TR20 Pro, it's available. You can go get a discount on our website. You're not buying it through us. I don't sell cameras anymore. We want to share you the link to get you additional 10% off from Milesy. Whatever their sale is, we want you to throw another 10% on it. We want you to come out ahead. We'll give you that code. But at the end of the day, you need to understand that thermal imaging cameras have come down in price. These things are like $399 now for a super, very, very high-end thermal imaging camera. No joke. The TR20 Pro is a high-end thermal imaging camera. It is 50 hertz. It will not have lag. It not only does the visual, but also the infrared spectrum pictures at the same time. It's a beast. It's a beast. So again, and so affordable. So be careful on those lower end ones if you're going to do this professionally. Again, you can get away with it. It gives you a good enough, but this is your profession. There's a reason to move up a little bit higher in class and take advantage of that 10% off, folks. I'm serious. Okay. Now, thanks for joining me today. I really wanted to make sure that we translated this into clear actions for you as a safety professional as well. You're an electrician. You care about these things. You learn about 70E. You learn about electrical safety. You understand electricity kills. This is just another thing to add into your toolbox. And you know what? You can see things with a thermal imaging camera that others can't see. But the difference is you are going to learn how to be able to distinguish what you see. And that's the difference. We only focus on electrical thermography. Check it out, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on another episode of Master the NEC podcast. Be sure to share it with other people. We are still getting about 300,000 unique downloads a month, so it's staying pretty steady. We had a little drop last month. Down, I think it was 260, whatever. Again, this is across all of our platforms because they're all in one. And we share them on Spotify, Spreaker, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all different platforms, Podbean. So this is collectively across all of our channels. So again, we encourage you to share this with other people. If you have our mobile app, then you can get that off our website, the fasttracksystem.com. Get our mobile app and you can listen to all the podcasts there as well. So check that out. It's free. We won't push anything down your throat. If you're interested in getting into our program, we'd love to have you add certified thermal imaging to your business portfolio. And just, it's coming, folks. If you want to expand your business, this is the way to do it. And you're doing your customer a good service. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on another episode.
Thanks for tuning into another electrifying episode of the Master the NEC podcast. We hope you're feeling more powered up and ready to tackle the electrical world with the knowledge and confidence you need to succeed. Remember, in the electrical trade, knowledge is power, and we're here to make sure you stay plugged into the latest insights, tips, and code updates. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the podcast with your fellow electricians and industry pros. Until next time, keep your tools sharp, your circuits clear, and your mind focused, because here at the Master the NEC podcast, we're all about sparking your success. Stay safe, stay smart, and keep mastering the trade. From all of us here at Electrical Code Academy, thank you for all your support, and we will see you on the next amazing Master the NEC podcast episode.